and welcome everyone. It looks like there are several of you who are joining right now. I'm glad that we have a group of you because this is going to be such a hopefully inspiring conversation. I'm going to be sharing from my perspective what I've done in my own firm, and hopefully that will help many of you. So welcome. Grab some coffee, sit back, go ahead and enjoy this conversation. I'm somebody who very much likes questions. So if you throw them over into chat, I will see them from time to time. I'll go and check on those and I'll try to answer those as much as I can. I am going to come from that perspective of I'm a practitioner like you. So my input is going to be what I've experienced myself. There's specific FinSmart questions. Some of those I will forward over directly to FinSmart, but as far as being here, welcome to you. And hello, Connie. I see you saying hi over there. All right, it looks like many of you have joined, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. When I heard about this webinar, was asked to present, I got excited. So anytime that I get to talk about outsourcing or offshoring, then that's something that I feel like is an opportunity. For me, I wanted to share with my community some resources that we have found in our own firm and my team to be useful to us. So this webinar is all about navigating outsourcing for small firms, a hands-on approach to success. So that is where we're going to begin our journey. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Liz Scott, and I do a couple of different things. So serialpreneur. I have a consulting firm where what we do is develop training for the accounting community. So that way tech partners can come to us and they want to know how to communicate with the accounting community. What is it that we're looking for? How do we need to digest information? And so I spend a lot of time there in training development. I also, like many of you, have got a firm and I work with small business clients. We use QuickBooks Online and then a whole bunch of various different apps. And then also the fun thing that I do is the happy hour. And so some of you have maybe seen me over there. So hello. And what we do in that space is talk about accounting technology for accountants. So it's just a fun place to be able to sit back, happy hour, play on words. We're drinking cocktails, hanging out, talking tech. The other thing is part of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. I've traveled around for many years talking directly to accounting practitioners, how to utilize QuickBooks Online, certification, those kinds of things. And then with Insightful Accountant, I have been part of that community for a long time and was honored by being named top trainer. Today, what we're going to be talking about is outsourcing. I'm going to share from that perspective of the accounting industry. What is it that we are looking for and what are some of the thoughts there? Also this, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like there's too much on my shoulders. And that's a lot of demand that many of us feel. We're wearing a whole lot of hats. So from the bookkeeper's perspective, there is a lot to be done that sometimes is underappreciated. So how do we get help in that area? And what are some of those first steps to get started? How do you communicate and work and build a team, especially whenever you're talking about maybe part of that team is going to be offshore? So there's a lot of opportunity there, and I'll share some of the things that we've done in order to build our own internal team community. And then how do you find the right outsourcing or offshoring partner? So that's going to be a big part of our focus. And I'm going to go ahead and say, here's where most of us get familiar with outsourcing. We have been outsourced too. So if you are a bookkeeper or an accounting firm, tax, then you have clients that are coming to you and they've outsourced to you. But now we see this growing need for our community to also ask for help. So this is something that we are very familiar with the perspective of businesses coming to us for help. That's something that a lot of times these businesses come to us. They don't exactly even know what to ask for. They just know that they need help. And then by listening to those businesses, that's whenever we have those aha moments where we're able to say, okay, I'm getting it. You need help with reconciliation. You're needing help with maybe closing out invoices, maybe that reconciliation piece, maybe understanding bank feeds. So those are all things that are very comfortable for us. Now it's that flipping the script and turning it into, we as a community of bookkeepers and accountants are now asking for help. And there are a lot of businesses that are utilizing outsourced services. So I think that this opportunity that we have as a bookkeeping accounting community to ask for help is something that we're seeing growing. One of the things that I find valuable is these types of conversations where we can get together. Any of those questions that you have, feel free to ask those, because this is something that I think we as a community have a lot of questions about, because we're starting to get very involved in this idea of a global workforce and how exactly do you effectively create those. Here's something that I would say we all relate to. This is the place where, as an entrepreneur, we all struggle to keep up. So when I think of what is required for success, it's this planning. It's being able to actually lead a team. So how do you manage those people, and how do you communicate with those people? Being able to deliver customer service. I want to be able to talk to my clients. I want to be able to answer their questions when they're coming in and they're asking us questions, whether that's via email or the phone or Slack, however it is that you're communicating. Being able to answer those clients timely and with correct information matters. Oftentimes when my clients are coming to me, they're not asking for help very often. They might have a very specific question. They need help with the vendor credits. They need help with, maybe they're stuck in a special spot with receiving a payment. They invoiced the client came back and maybe they tipped them, or they had a delivery fee that was added on. So they need help, but it's not often, but it's timely help. So that's a place that I definitely think that we struggle to be able to offer that excellence in customer service when we're overwhelmed. And that leads to customers not being satisfied. They don't feel like they're getting the help they need. Some of the areas that I think we struggle in as a community with our clients is this virtual environment. All of my clients, I'm working with them virtually. So when they are asking me questions, I need to be able to communicate to them quickly, and that really is going to set the tone for the relationship. Deliverables, if there's the 15th of the month, they want financial statements. If they want to be reconciled by the 10th of the month, that requires a collection of information. So that back and forth conversation, in order to be able to create those deliverables, that matters. And it's hard to deliver excellence when you're in a place of holding all of the balls in the air. It's easy for some of those to come crashing down. Marketing and sales. I would say that the majority of us here might be shy people. That doesn't mean that we're not on top of our game. That just means that when it comes to marketing and being on social, some are better than others. I love being able to work with my team. I love being able to talk to the community, but it doesn't mean that I'm awesome at social 100% of the time. And when you ask me what's going to come first, customer service and deliverables or marketing, I'm going to tell you that marketing is going to take a back seat. That's not always an effective plan whenever I'm thinking about growth. So something is going to slide whenever I'm too overwhelmed and I've got a lot on my shoulders. that financial management, being able to make sure that you're staying on top of everything that is a consideration. What is your profitability? Do you need to increase prices? Do you have too many apps that you've connected? Do you need to cut some of those expenses? That requires headspace. And it's difficult to have that headspace when you don't have the time to do it. So one of the things that I like to say is you've got to create brain space. And if you don't have that brain space, you're going to struggle with some success. Compliance, this is something that we know is a growing concern in our industry. Last year, the FTC and the IRS came out and they said, we've got some protocol that we have to follow if you're a tax practitioner. Those rules started to apply to everybody, bookkeepers included, this year. And so that means that if you are doing any type of financial work, you are now part of that requirement for compliance. You need to make sure that you are encrypting your emails, you're using portals, those kinds of things. So that's part of that compliance. And it does require some thought in those spaces. How do you make sure that you are staying current with compliance, security, any type of antiviruses? Those kinds of things matter, and it's difficult whenever you've got a lot that you're juggling. Technology growth, we know apps are out there, we know AI is growing, so those are areas that you definitely have to pay attention. The need to pivot is a requirement, I would say, whenever it comes to business success. There's so much that is in the bookkeeping space that changes all the time. And so technology is pivoting. We need to pivot with it. Exit strategy. I encourage all of you here, even if you just got started, to think about what is it that you want long-term. Do you have a plan in place? And for us as a firm, we started off not having that exit strategy in place. And when we started to incorporate this idea of where do we want to go end term, that allowed us to be able to say, how do we connect with apps? Whenever I think about outsourcing and offshoring, that is actually part of our exit strategy. If somebody wanted to acquire our firm, they're not going to have a lot of learning needs, because they're going to have a team that's going to already be established, and that team would essentially go with them. And so it makes it a whole lot easier for a exit strategy. I'm going to say for outsourcing in accounting firms, this is me. So in 2019, we outsourced, in 2021, we outsourced our firm, and then we were able to start seeing some of the relief that happened immediately. So our internal team stayed in place. I didn't want to let go of any team members. I absolutely love them. We're a community. And so I wanted to be able to allow some of the, demands that are on the team's shoulders to be relieved. And that was something that outsourcing allowed us to do. So I'm going to be sharing from a very personal space what my experience has been like. One of the things that led me into outsourcing was burnout. We were experiencing in our own team burnout. And I can tell you some of the areas that I see with my community is most of them are not getting enough physical attention. So that means being able to get up from your desk, take a bathroom break, make sure that you're getting a lunch break. It doesn't bother me a bit that if you're at this webinar eating, great. That means that you're doing some self-care. Maybe you've got a standing desk, whatever it is that you've got to make sure that you've got some circulation in your legs, your body's moving, that helps your brain. That is important, especially in this industry where we know that long-term sitting is not beneficial to your health. The other part of this is emotional. As somebody who receives a lot of those phone calls from your clients, that takes a toll on you as an individual. You need to be able to have relief whenever it comes to dealing with these types of phone calls. They want to know, clients want to know, how do they get better? What's your recommendation? That takes some of you pouring into that person. So make sure that you're paying attention to giving also requires getting back in return. Professional burnout. Sometimes in this particular industry, it's easy to say, we've got a lot of client demands. And so it turns into wanting to leave this industry. During COVID, there was a lot of bookkeepers and accountants who left this industry. Whenever I think of where we were, we wouldn't have been able to have as much success as we did during some of those really demanding times if we didn't have additional help that was able to carry the burden and the workload. Financial burnout. Here's a place that why I started outsourcing is I wanted to grow my team. I wanted to avoid some of these other areas of burnout. So I hired a team of 10 and we had individual tasks. I think that this type of work requires a lot of different skill sets. So that meant I was managing a lot of different salaries. That became very expensive. And if we didn't have the workload to be able to support all of those individuals, that created a scenario where we weren't going to be able to maintain that long term. Role conflict. This is where I think about, as an individual, you've got a personal life and a work life. When you allow your work life to bleed into your personal life, you're carrying some of that stress home with you. In the accounting industry, we have a ton of, I would say, mental health issues. We've got a lot of individuals who are carrying such heavy loads that they're struggling on a personal level. So this is where, when you have a team that can assist you in these areas, you're no longer experiencing this kind of burnout because you've got different team members who are carrying the different roles and responsibilities. Decision fatigue. We know we cannot make good decisions if we are overworked. So you're not able to pay attention to what's coming in our industry. You're not able to see the trends and catch a hold of those. You know, AI is a big thing that's happened to us in 2023. Lots of recommendations how to use AI in the accounting industry, but it's difficult to even pay attention to some of those, YouTube channels or, some of the apps that we're currently using that has AI built into it. It's difficult to even find out what type of features are available when you are in a space that you're not able to pay attention. Social, a lot of us are in virtual environments, so it's very easy for us to be at our desks for long period of times. That means that you don't have a good community that maybe you're reaching out to. I recommend these types of webinars, these types of communities. Anytime that you've got a Facebook group that you can reach out to, even though it's virtual, it's somebody who you're tethered to. Create real relationships, have virtual coffee meetings, join some groups where you can go into a webinar, maybe environment, but go on camera and start to talk about what are some of the things that you're feeling, because we're all feeling it. So that's one of those things that I think happens in an isolation environment. You feel like you're the only one, and that's not the reality. We're all facing these types of issues. And when you start to share that, that's whenever you're able to say, how did you get help? What did you do in order to address these kinds of client issues? Client burnout. When I was talking about clients asking questions and they need to be answered timely, that is very demanding. And if you are overburdened, this is going to be something that you're going to struggle with, having a positive attitude with your client. Instead, you start to see them as a challenge. And, yes, some of those clients are definitely challenges within themselves. Maybe it's the workload, maybe it's the type of personality, but it's easier to address those needs whenever your needs are also being met. And this comes back to being able to think about how can you pivot as a firm? What can you do? You're in this webinar today, so you're here, you're interested in outsourcing. How does that help you? That is innovation all by itself. So being in this presence allows you to think about the types of ideas that you can put in place in order to help yourself in some of these areas that you might be struggling. So you might be somebody who's like, oh my gosh, I'm all of these people and I'm experiencing all of this type of burnout. Maybe you're just somebody who's experiencing it in a couple of different areas, but that's where it matters whenever you're thinking about how do you move forward in a way that is going to create a healthy environment for yourself. So I knew that I was experiencing some of these types of burnouts, but what I struggled with was finding talent. And I had looked here in the US, I shared with you that I had hired 10 different team members. Some of those team members that I had hired were actually QuickBooks Live team members. And what I had found was that they fought amongst themselves. That was surprising to me. I was hiring people who were degreed professional individuals, and there was a cultural demand that required me to step into being a mediator. And that was not what I needed. Instead, what I needed was to be able to hire team members to help me in those areas that I needed assistance, and to have an environment where we were a team and we were working on clients together. We were establishing great deliverables. And so one of the things that I struggled with was finding US team members to be able to help me in those areas. And also to find those team members that were affordable. That was the other thing that I was sharing earlier, that these salaries were really high. I needed some people that had expertise in different areas, and those wages were really hard to maintain whenever I was trying to grow the client base as well. So this is something that I think that a lot of us are facing, and there's tons of benefits whenever I'm thinking about outsourcing. And that comes into play with being able to have team members that are affordable. I needed to be able to have affordable help to be able to help me reach my growth goals. So those two very much played into each other, and outsourcing allowed me to be able to meet my growth goals without breaking the bank. I was able to find team members that actually had experience. A lot of times you're looking at team members that have got degrees, they've got certifications, they've got the training that you're needing to be able to work with your clients and the types of tasks that you're needing. Internal development, being able to focus on the core competencies, that's something that for us, we are a technology source for our clients. I need to be able to focus in those areas of technology to assist my clients. So being able to outsource some of those routine tasks allows me to focus on those areas that are more advisory level. And the other thing is this 24/7 approach. So when you're thinking about a global workforce, not only are you going to be able to operate in US hours, but in an offshoring environment, you're going to have access to hours that are going to be in different time zones. So if a client question or a query comes in, you're able to address those. One of the things that we do with our team members is we will look at the work that has been performed, and then we'll give responses by the end of our US day. And then our offshore team is able to look at those whenever they come into their AM, and they can start to work through those. And by the time that they're towards the end of the day, we're starting our day. And so there's a little bit of a overlap there. But one of the things I get asked all the time is that something that is a problem? And my answer to you is no. We have not experienced that being an issue at all, because we're able to have that crossover of time. We do meet on a regular basis, so there is a cadence to those meetings. And anything that needs to be addressed in an environment where we're talking through it, we do have an overlap of hours, so we're able to do that. But otherwise, we're just parking notes and working our normal days. I do see a couple of clients here or questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and ask this. Monica, you're asking, so semi-retired and turning down clients, because you want work-life balance. I'm happy for you, Monica. That's really important. But you're saying, hey, maybe I could actually continue to take on some clients in an environment where you've got the right type of model. I will share with you, Monica, that I'm in a space that in my accounting firm, I am working probably about 5 hours a week. So when you're talking about retirement, I think that those are the kinds of hours that would certainly be reasonable. I do have a couple of US team members, and so they are able to work on a more regular basis, so that way they're able to help those accounting client concerns and questions. But on a whole, in the accounting firm, I'm working 5 hours a week, and we have excellent customer service where deliverables are top notch. We're able to help them with any type of immediate needs that they've got. So I would say that yes, Monica, with the right type of environment and the right type of help, you can certainly get into that comfortable work-life balance in retirement. Let's see, Elizabeth, your great name. So who is your trusted offshore outsourced connection? And yeah, Monica said, yay. So, Elizabeth, there's a lot of really good resources out there, and there's a lot of good solutions. Who I'm going to be talking about today, and I'm going to share some of the resources that are here in this deck, is FinSmart. So FinSmart is somebody who's going to our conferences. They're working with people just like you and I. And they have got a ton of people who are just like us, who have experienced being able to have this type of work-life balance, so and delivering of excellence. When I think about accounting firms and the areas that they are offshoring, these are some of the biggest buckets. So meeting current workload demands. I will tell you that you've got a couple of different statistics here. You've got small firms and you've got large firms. So the difference here in the type of outsourcing and the amount of outsourcing, it matters on the size of the accounting firm. When it comes to handling peak workloads, tax is going to be a big area that large firms are outsourcing. Why I find this super helpful is those of you who are here that say, maybe I'm a bookkeeping firm, or maybe I'm a CPA, but I don't want to do tax. I have tons of friends who are just like that. But you can actually offer those types of services if you're networking with an outsourced solution that has those type of services available to you. Specialized task, this is where you start to get into, are you wanting to do some cash flow models? Do you want to help with some analytics? Those types of tasks are areas that we're seeing being offshored as well. Mary, I see that you've got a question here. When I try to get more team in place to assist clients, my team complains. There are too many hands in the pot. Okay, I got an answer there. They feel it creates confusion if one person isn't the one responding. Any suggestions? Here's where what we have created is an environment where we've got delegated duties. So, one of the things that I'm going to share here is this next slide. So the types of tasks that are being outsourced, that's where you start to say, maybe you have somebody who's solely responsible for the bank feeds. Maybe you've got somebody who's solely responsible for the reconciliation or the reports. In those types of environments, it's easy to say there's one team member who it's their delegated duty to go and produce financial reports. Or in an environment like what we've got our bookkeeping and even our financial documents are being created by our outsourced team. The internal team is taking on the client questions. So if the client asks a specific question around payroll, that would be something that the internal team would handle. If it's something that the outsourced team says, we've got a transaction, we don't know who wrote this check, what it was for, we don't know, we can't maybe read because it's a handwritten check, we can't read who the vendor is, that would be communication that our internal team might ask our client directly. The reason for that is consistency. I know that one of my really good friends, Rebecca, who utilizes FinSmart, she actually has the FinSmart team reaching out directly to the client and answering those questions. So it's really, how do you feel comfortable in those types of environments? But I would say, Mary, that it has to do with who's responsible for which tasks. And in an area where you're talking about bringing in some assistance, the reason that you're probably doing that is because you have growth goals. It's hard to meet those growth goals whenever you're at capacity. So maybe it's the current team members that you've got in place have specific talents, and so you want to keep them in place with those talents, but then there's other areas that they're struggling. I know for us, we had a bank feed challenge. We wanted the bank feeds to be caught up daily. That meant we needed to have team members who were touching their QuickBooks files daily. It's difficult to do that whenever they also have other tasks that they're responsible for. So even if it's a scenario where you're delegating the bank feeds, that task alone takes time. It takes consideration. Whenever I think about how do you communicate that? Because I think that that's going to be another area that your team might come back and say, well, I know the client, I know their spending habits. It's easy to see in a QuickBooks Online environment. If you log into your bank feeds and you're looking at how was this type of bank feed handled in the past, you can see that vendor and you can see the accounting history by being able to look at what account was used. That's all visible directly in the bank feeds. That doesn't take somebody who's had years of experience with that specific client to answer those kinds of questions. When you talk about having these specific client questions, that's whenever, yes, you're going to need to be able to park those kinds of questions, internal team member, or in a scenario where you're teaching your outsourced solution how to handle those client questions, they're going to learn it too. The other part that I'm going to say is documentation matters. I'm going to share with you some of the resources that FinSmart has for their documentation, because I think that that matters in the way that you communicate with your team, your US-based team, your outsourced team. But there's a lot of different tasks that maybe are related to payroll, those sales tax. Those are things that maybe your internal team has got a really strong handhold on. You want to keep them in that place, but maybe you want to outsource the reports, the financial statements, the gathering of those, the review of those. That's part of what we outsource, is being able to perform the bookkeeping tasks, pull those financial statements, review the work, and then bring to us any of the questions that are remaining. Those are the kinds of client communication and team communication that is necessary for any client success. Let me come over here. Monica, you've got some questions. Let's see. I'd love to chat with you in the near future to understand how I can work less smarter, not harder. Wait, what? Like under 10 hours a week to support more clients. It's all about being able to create this environment for success. And a lot of that has to do with being able to, let's go ahead and switch over to this, identifying these needs. So that's the first place that we started. We were talking about internally, where did we need help? We hired these different team members. It was something that was financially difficult to maintain because we didn't have the client growth in order to maintain that long term. We actually had some, there was some need to adopt our environment, and whether that is workflow or that's team communication, those are areas that first you need to think about, how are you going to communicate with your team? How do you in this existing time period? How do you communicate with your team? So those are some of the things that you'll want to think about. Are there certain tasks that your team is overwhelmed with? Do you have team members that you think might be leaving soon? Do you have any team members who are going to be taking maternity leave? Or do you have any team members who are thinking about retirement? Those are the types of things that would be immediate needs that you would want to address. Also, I would say if you have growth needs, how are you going to onboard clients? That might be an area where you pull in your existing team to say, we're going to be the ones who are collecting the necessary documentation and having those onboarding client calls. That takes time to gather the information about what the client needs. Those are going to be some of the areas that you might want your internal team to develop their skills. Even the onboarding means that you might be the person who is taking all of those sales calls, but if you have a team member who now their job is shifting, they might be the perfect person to take on those client calls. So it really depends on where it is that you're wanting to go. But Elizabeth, you've got a question here. So does FinSmart help with onboarding new clients? Do you have team members that can take on sales calls? So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that part of this focus on success is being able to understand where do you need your US team to focus and where do you need your offshore team to focus. Those two areas can support each other very well. And when you're talking about onboarding clients, I'm going to show you some of the documentation that FinSmart has got as resources to be able to help you with onboarding. But when you've got a team that is helping you, and now you're no longer in some of those burnout phases, then you're able to address some of these other areas that are going to help you with your success. So defining your goals, part of this means looking for the right type of talent. What is it that you're looking for? I wanted somebody who had some experience. I wanted team members who were able to work with tech. I have not had any of my outsourced team members who weren't comfortable in tech. All of them have been environments where they know they're going to be in a virtual environment. I'm not starting from scratch. I'm not teaching them QuickBooks Online. They already come to me with that training, and then we're teaching them the environment that we're working in. That jump starts our relationship so that we're able to get into client work really quickly. Some of the other things that you want to think about are the types of duties. So the bookkeeping, tax preparation, if that's going to be something that you are offering now or would like to offer. Payroll preparation, the financial reports, and then other types of services that you might be offering could be AP, those kinds of areas. Defining work area hours. So for us, we knew that we wanted to immediately hire about 5 team members. That was something that was going to help us with our current needs. You might be in a situation like my friend Rebecca, who wanted to hire somebody part-time, and then after there was enough work, wanted to bring on somebody who was going to be full-time. And then once she had that full-time team member, that immediately sent her into the next phase where she wanted to hire another full-time team member. And so she was able to grow her client base, which helped her to grow her revenue. The other thing that we experienced is because we were delivering better client excellence, we were actually able to comfortably ask for more dollars from our clients in order to be able to grow our profitability, which then also led to being able to hire more team members. That means that there's room for growth. So anytime that I'm thinking about growth, I want to overhire at least by 1 team member in order to allow for that growth. So knowing how many team members that you need, maybe you're in this place where you want to start with part-time. Maybe you're in a place where I was, you want to be able to hire a team of 5, those kinds of things. That's going to help you. How do you get started? So for us, what we wanted to do is we wanted to have a smooth onboarding experience. we wanted to transition in a way that was going to help us to stay comfortable with our current workload, but then also in this place of gradually giving our work over to our offshore team. I'm going to tell you that transition happened a lot faster than I thought it would. I had this expectations that it would take 3-6 months. It just didn't. It was much faster than that. Within 30 days, we were already seeing a big relief. We were experiencing that our team was able to take a lot of the documentation that we had given them. And even in a scenario where maybe your documentation isn't fully built out, our team was able to say, okay, because we can look at QuickBooks Online, because we can look at history of transactions, we're able to see the treatment of like transactions and then implement that. So that helped us to be able to establish some documentation. If we had a team member that came to us and said, how do you handle a scenario where you've got a client that's spending in areas that we're not sure if this is allowable or not? Those are the kinds of things that then we went back into our documentation and we said, oh, it's really common for this particular client to have this kind of behavior, and we treat it as client relations, or maybe in a technology scenario. I'm thinking about a client that we had that was in question, and our outsourced team said, why does this particular client have so many internet connections? Well, it was because that was something they were establishing, and it was a pass through to their client. So we were able to teach our team really fast, document that, and even have some help with documentation from our team. And that assisted us with our training. FinSmart has this very clever onboarding process. This is a step-by-step approach that they take. So this is the FinSmart onboarding process: the sharing of data, setting up that work calendar, being able to understand the documents that are necessary, and then processing in the client's accounting software, being able to look at that client data, and then ask some questions internally, and then start to have some queries. Those are going to go into a scenario where oftentimes, as our outsourcing team was learning, they would send us questions, and the US team would say, here's the answers to those questions, and that would help to answer some of those questions. If those aren't all answered, then those would be additional questions would be sent on to the client. Then we have a review of the work. Any areas that need to be resolved are, and then now you get into a weekly cadence. And then you start to move into this quality tracker. So quality assurance, and part of that is together. What we establish is a review of the books that allows for our team to ask us any questions that they've got, and then the existing team to say, oh, that's something that I forgot to share with you. That client does XYZ. That's why it moves along so much faster. And by the time that we got to 90 days, a lot of our team, our US teams, was hands off. And they were experiencing the same type of relief that many who are outsourcing experience. The quality tracker, so that then moves over into a quality control of every quarter. And then being able to do some reviews that happens on a, the first one's supposed to say monthly, and that next one says quarterly. That's not FinSmart's fault, that's mine. That was my transformation of the data. Elizabeth, you've got a question here. So can you please tell me if FinSmart is confident with CRMs? Which ones do you use? I think that would be an area to talk directly to FinSmart, but I can tell you that the experience that I have had, and those users of FinSmart that I have spoken to as well, the team is going to adapt to whatever your environment is. So if you've got a workflow tool, that's what we taught our team, and they adopted that workflow tool. And in, one of my team members, they're in an entire Microsoft environment. So everything they do is in that Microsoft environment. So the team learned that Microsoft environment, and that's what they utilize. So hopefully that kind of helps with some of those questions there. And some of the workflow tools that I've used several because that's part of that technology background. So Monday, ClickUp, Arrow Workflow, Client Hub, Canopy. There's a lot of really good ones out there. You just have to figure out what is it that you like and what kind of environment works for your team. I will say this is where the gold comes into play. How you are going to document and share over with a team is essential, but it doesn't mean it's hard. So in this case, here's some of the examples of the way that FinSmart collects information. So first, they want to know about the bookkeeping firm. What's the name? How many team members are in the US that exist? And what are their roles? And are those roles expected to change as your outsourced team starts to learn the client needs? What's the internal communication? We use Slack most of the time. We also have team members who are using other types of communication tools. So Teams is a Microsoft environment that's really handy whenever you're internally talking, but whenever we're talking with our clients, that's whenever we bring in Slack a lot of times. Time tracking, how are you tracking your hours? What tool are you using here? Document management, there's a lot of really good ones out there. You've got Smart Vault that we've used for years, but there's a ton of other good ones out there that we've tried. Box, SharePoint, because we are a Microsoft-based firm. That's another one that we utilize. And then any type of other tools. So if you're somebody who's using like Zenit, who does bookkeeping review of the books and then make some suggestions as to the types of changes or edits that need to be made to the books, those are the types of tools that FinSmart would want to know in order to adopt those technologies and continue with production. Let's see, client introduction. So once FinSmart understands what the accounting firm or bookkeeping firm needs and team members are, that's whenever you start to share over client information. So here's kind of a list of the way that we share information. Client name, what industry are they in? Are they a multi-member or single member LLC? Are they cash or are they accrual? Are they using QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, Xero, Sage? There's lots of options out there, FreshBooks. So you need to communicate that. And then you start to build this client portfolio. This happens very quickly. And a lot of your team members are going to be able to help you collect this information if you don't already have it. The next piece is when the training comes into play. So here's where you're gathering the information about how the duties are going to be performed. What duties are going to be performed? What are you responsible for? And are there any type of, in this case, reconciliation requirements? When are those due? Are there reports that go along with that reconciliation? The number of banks and credit cards that are connected, that's necessary in order for the team to know what are they responsible for. We have clients that they want to do the bank feeds because they have a lot of job costing. Our team is not going to know what those job costing allocations are, because that needs to be done by our client's internal team. So those are the things that we note. And then how are those bank feeds going to be imported? Is it going to be CSV files, or are all of their accounts connected to bank feeds? New vendors, are there needs for W-9s? You've got some clients that are never going to have any type of contract work. Then you're going to have other areas and industries like construction that are going to need a ton of 1099. So is there some type of process in place? Are you going to ask for those documents to be collected on a reoccurring basis? Is there a monthly cadence? That's something that we wanted to get into for years, and we struggled with being able to get W-9s collected timely, and our team was just trying to meet current client demands. Because of utilizing an outsourced solution, we're able to actually look monthly and in some cases quarterly. So when it came to collecting 1099 information, we were ready by January 1. We had a few outstanding questions. You're going to always have those stragglers, but we were able to be in a position to comfortably say, we understand who we're going to need to produce 1099s for, and we were able to close those out very rapidly. Any type of special circumstances. So we've got clients who want to create their own invoices, but they're terrible at receiving the payments against those invoices. So if it wasn't for us, those would just be dangling open invoices for eternity. And part of our role is to come in and help them with closing those invoices by putting the correct received payments. So those are the kinds of questions that FinSmart's going to have. What type of duties do they have? Who's going to be responsible for it? How does that process actually work? Lots of areas that you're going to have questions. How do you handle ask my accountant or uncategorized expenses? Is there some type of automation? I know that there's a lot of really cool tools like Uncat that once a transaction hits that uncategorized account, boom, it sends off a message straight over to the client, and that client is asked right away to answer, what is this transaction? So there's some automation that can be in play. You want to go ahead and share that you've got some type of protocol in place for that. Or if you're using a workflow tool like Client Hub, it's got that built in. So it's going to also send over those messages directly to the client. And there's no need for the internal team to answer those kinds of questions. Reconciliation of open items. How is that handled? So uncleared transactions. We have a report that is created every single month, and we share that over with our client. And we're able to say, did you know that this check is now open for the last 2 months? Did it get lost in the mail? Or is it such a small amount that you don't think that the individual that you sent that to is ever going to cash it? So those are the kinds of things that we do want to answer whenever we're closing out the month. That's part of, I think, using a professional is making sure that you've got an environment where you've got a professional firm who is helping to reconcile. Whenever I'm looking at my clients who reconcile themselves, unclear transactions are always left open. They don't know to close those. So that's an environment where they're never going to have a correct bank balance. I have a couple of questions that are over here in Q&A, and I've been paying attention to chat, not Q&A, so I apologize to those of you who are asking questions over in the Q&A. So Sue, you're in Canada. So is everything I'm saying relevant to you? I am certainly US based, so I know my US rules, and I know with my insurance policy in place, what is allowable. I'm not sure with Canada, so that would be a question that I would say ask directly to FinSmart what some of those protocols are. Heather, you were talking about compliance. That would be one of the areas that I was just talking about. So with us, you might want to look at your engagement letters and look to see we have contract labor that's actually included in our verbiage for our engagement letters, which includes us being able to work with a solution like FinSmart. Mary, so when I try to get more team in place, Mary, you asked that question over in chat, so thanks for sending that over where I would see it. Sue, how do you get started, and what kind of access would the outsourced team need, and how do you get the info to them? So maybe that this this is answering some of those questions. You're collecting that information, you're sharing it over with your FinSmart team, and then the type of access is going to depend on the type of work that you're doing. And in a scenario, there's lots of different ways to approach the outsourcing. Maybe you want to have the outsourced team collecting the documentation, maybe the internal team, that's their responsibility. So there's lots of different protocol that you can put in place. Lots of options work. It's more of you're establishing that, and then you're pulling in your team and you're saying, this is the way that we're going to be working. Am I transparent with my clients about outsourcing and what is their perspective? I do a lot of training like this, so I have a lot of transparency with my clients. I want them to be in the know about what's going on, and that's whenever I think that the relationship is more comfortable because everybody's on the same page. But that is certainly something that you would decide internally. Stephanie, in addition to collecting W-9s, do you also offer the service of collecting contractor compliance documentations? Okay, so, there's oftentimes whenever you're going to have an audit of some kind. And yes, we have served the construction community for a long time. There's a lot of additional requirements that are necessary there besides just a W-9. So that is something that we do collect. Being able to have additional team members allows us to be able to stay current on that collection of information. I'm going to move over into the relationship area. So I'm going to say one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how do I work with my outsourced team? Like they're humans. So what I mean by that is we have meetings, and sometimes they're daily whenever that's necessary. We talk about our kids. We celebrate birthdays. Often my team members know that I've got a couple of office dogs. So do they. And we talk about our dogs. That's something that, on a human nature, all of us have. We have individual lives. We share that because we're doing work stuff all the time. And so it's important to also address people as individuals, and that's part of that growth of the team. When it comes to working and that type of communication, some of the things that we've done to help with success is establish the way that we're going to communicate. So is that going to be in Teams? Is it going to be Slack? Is that going to be in some type of workflow tool? That is established, and that's actually something that is written. We have a written policy that says we don't pick up the phone and text each other unless it's an emergency. There are very few emergencies, so we actually do list some of those out. And that way we're respecting people's privacy, because you should be allowed to have a personal life. Work stays in the work environment. And the expectations and the goals, that's whenever we are putting together, here's the tasks that are necessary. Here's how we're going to do that. And then we do these evaluations. And that's how we build trust, because we're talking about what's necessary. When it comes to finding the right solution, this type of environment is where you're going to be able to learn. And I'm going to say conferences. Make sure that you're looking at reviews. Talk to your peers. Outsourcing is becoming very common. So I think that there's many of you who are already in the know of somebody who is doing this. Talk to them about their experience. Who are they using? There is a very cool outsourcing ROI playbook that is available to all of you. Let me post that over inside of chat right now, so that way you all have access to this. You can go in and you can plug in your scenario. You can make sure that for you, that this type of environment will work. This is going to give you some ideas as to what would be areas to pay attention to, and what kind of value are you going to get by outsourcing? I am going to say most of you asked questions throughout. If there's any other questions, let me come over here and look, and I don't see any additional questions. So that makes me pretty darn happy. So I'm just going to do a quick recap. Outsourcing is something in our industry that is here, and I believe it is something that is here to stay. It's because we are, as an industry, overburdened. There's a lot of demands on us, and to be able to meet those demands, we need help. Getting started, part of that's documenting who you are as a bookkeeping or accounting firm, being able to establish what your team is going to be doing in both roles, and then also finding a solution and then sharing over what duties you want to establish as part of that work environment. I am posting FinSmart's contact information, and this is so that way all of you have access to FinSmart. You can call them directly, and any of these questions that I was not able to answer, you can ask that team directly. I want to thank all of you for being here. The attendance was phenomenal, and I wish all of you a very productive day, and hopefully this has been a journey that will assist you in your firm as well. Bye to everyone, and thank you for being here.